I'm Brandy Horton, Vice President of Communications with Rails-to-Trails Conservancy, and I am joined here today by Jewel Bush with Girl Trek and Kenji Haratunian, who is representing the steering committee for the Recreate Responsibly Coalition. And we wanted to bring this conversation together today because we are at what seems like a really crucial turning point in terms of how people are going to be spending their time and what that looks like as more people get vaccinated, as we move into what has been fondly introduced as late stage pandemic. So I'm going to share my screen and walk through a few things that we've been thinking about and gathering here at Rails-to-Trails Conservancy. So the context for why we're here. I think it's been super interesting. It's too early to have data about trends on some of these things, and it's too early to know exactly what's coming next. But we're seeing a lot of experts and we're seeing a lot of anecdotal reports that while vaccinations are rolling, and we heard the president last night share that he wants folks to have full access, U.S. adults, by May to the vaccine. We also know that travel won't be exactly the way it used to be in the before times, this year. And some of the predictions in this article that Vice put out this week say even in the next couple of years, it might look a lot different. And what we saw last year was people traveling close to home, people discovering those local gems, those national parks, the state parks, the trails in their community, places that maybe they had overlooked before, but that are fantastic destinations. And we expect that to continue really this year. And then once you've been doing something for a long time, the question is, how much does that become habit and something you start to look forward to? The other thing that's been really interesting, and it's been hard for a lot of folks, the impact on our physical and our mental health during this pandemic, but a lot of correlation being made between access to nature and the outdoors and what that's doing for people's resilience during this time. And this article from last month in the Wall Street Journal that really just kind of quantifies is 2 hours outside the new goal, right, versus 10,000 steps. What have we learned about being inside versus being outside during this time? And one of the things we've learned here at Rails-to-Trails Conservancy is that trails were really here for us last year, and they are always here for us. And they're an absolutely incredible amenity in our communities. There's 40,000 miles of multi-use trails. So those are places where you can walk, bike, stroll, roll, bring your kids, bring your dogs, all different activities, built from primarily, not majority from former railroad corridors, but all different types of rights of way in our communities. And we have trail counters nationwide, all across the country. And what we saw last year was these incredible, the green line is the 2020 number. We saw these incredible surges in multi-use trail use during the early parts of the pandemic. But then we saw it continue to be high, way higher than last year throughout the entire year, even into the fall and like the colder months when we typically see declines in trail use overall. And there's also been some reporting on outdoor participation and kind of what does that look like in this time and in this year. And early reports from the Outdoor Industry Association just show increases across the board, more people getting outside really in 2020 than ever before. But when you look at these incredible surges in hiking and camping, and then you look at multi-use trail use, there's really something to be said about having access to these places right where you live. And it has put a really bright light for us on not only the need to keep those places well maintained and open and build connections between them, but also 40,000 miles isn't enough. It doesn't hit every community in America. And what we really learned is that we need to be advocating for a trail in every single neighborhood because it really, really makes a difference. The other thing that we're really focusing on right now is the idea that things are changing and we're entering this late stage pandemic area. We don't really know what that fully means. We don't really know what afterlife is going to look like. But what we do know is that moving outside made a huge difference. We have an ongoing poll that is these are results pulled last week. And so far we've engaged over 1,500 people in this discussion. And 86% have said that having access to the outdoors has reduced their stress, whether that's a lot or a little. 58% say that they're going outdoors more or a lot more than they were before. And 45% now consider trails and open spaces to be very important. 50% always did. So that means 95% of people right now are thinking, on average, that these spaces are really important. And for us, we think that they were essential during the pandemic, but they're always essential. So we want people to keep moving, keep being active outside. It's so important as we continue to think about building resilience and kind of recovery from this really hard time that we've all been living through. But with that, and with the surging of people getting outside, comes a lot more people. 51% increase in trail use really equates to hundreds of millions of new people on trails in their communities. And that creates tension, as you can imagine. People are used to using the trails the way they like to use the trails. They might not be used to seeing as many families, or families might not be used to seeing bicyclists, all sorts of things. And so Rails-to-Trails has had a campaign for a long time called Share the Trail. The idea is that there's a lot of different types of trail users out there, and that we should all be working together to create welcoming spaces for each other. Those resources can be really helpful for folks looking for just offering tips and guidance for folks on how to be active outside. But as part of the Recreate Responsibly Coalition, we've also been thinking about what are some lessons that we learned last year through all of this that still apply in our day-to-day. And one is that recreation is essential. I think it is really, we often talk about recreation as a nice to have thing. And what we learned is when you started to take away the indoor spaces and you started to really ask people to be hunkered down at home, we learned how important recreation is to our mental health, our well-being, and our community, and how important those outside spaces are for that. Sharing is caring. Those spaces, everyone deserves access to nature. Everyone deserves access to the outdoors. Let's make sure that we're welcoming each other and our new friends and our old friends all out on the trails together. Masks are easy. We can bring them with us. We can have them at the ready when we're on the trail and we're outside. When we're within 6 feet of other people, we need to be wearing our mask. We still do. Rails-to-Trails Conservancy is going to continue to hammer that point home until we're out of the woods on that. Leave no trace is a concept that is often well known and understood in backcountry and kind of real outdoor adventure kind of perspective. Multi-use trails, a lot of people kind of getting out and about in their neighborhoods don't often think about that concept and the idea of trying to have the least amount of impact on the natural environment as possible. And I think what we saw this year with so many people out on trails is that you've got overflowing trash cans. You've got reduced staff and maintenance support because of different issues with the pandemic or finances. That's going to continue as you have more people, the amenities and the support changes. So we should all be following those leave no trace principles, because the nature that we're trying to protect is all around us. It's not just over there. Plan for the unexpected. Call ahead. Plan ahead, make sure you know what's open and what's closed. Make sure you know, my plan is to go to my favorite trail, the Washington and Old Dominion Trail. I get there on a Saturday, it's gorgeous, and I'm not comfortable. What's my plan B? I'll always be thinking about, in this time in particular, as people's behaviors are changing and people are getting out in different ways, thinking about what, managing your expectations and what might be different in this time. And just remember that the outdoors needs our support. I think what we saw this year was this flocking to these spaces and people realizing that they don't just take care of themselves. We have to maintain these spaces. We have to invest in these spaces. And it's with that in mind that Rails-to-Trails Conservancy launched the Trail Moments Initiative this year as a way to really connect with the people who found these spaces. We know that not everyone is an advocate for trails, but we know that everyone's story can be so helpful in advocating for these spaces. And they're also really helpful in inspiring other people to be active and outdoors. And so if you go to trailmoments.org, there's lots of lovely experiences that range from people who had been using trails all the time and really kind of increasing their trail use during the pandemic, to folks who found the trails and now are training for their first marathon because they just got the bug and they can't get rid of it. So just really nice stories, human interest angles, that if you're trying to tell a story in a certain way, you need a human interest perspective. Please reach out, because we have over 1,500 stories collected, about 30 states represented, English and Spanish language content that has come in. So there's a lot of potential to really kind of add some personal and first-person perspectives as to why this outdoor activity has mattered so much and why people are continuing to do it and what they're looking for in that effort this spring. Also on April 24th, it's Celebrate Trails Day. It's a day that Rails-to-Trails Conservancy hosts every year. This year's focus is really on an individual call to action. We want as many people as possible to get outside on their trail, find something new, do something new, find a new trail, but really have a show of support and gratitude for the trails that have served so much and so many during this time. As of right now, we have several thousand people who have RSVP'd from all over the country, 24 states. We're hoping to get to 50 states, but they are sharing with us that they're planning biking and walking and birding, some volunteering and service activities, family activities, just spending time in nature, connecting with nature, whether it's still cold where they live or it's starting to warm up or it's starting to get hot, depending on what part of the country that they're in. And we have at the Celebrate Trails website, rails2trails.org/celebrate trails, a bunch of resources that are being built out over the next 5 weeks that offer people tips like, I want to go birding. I've never done that before. How do I start birding in my neighborhood? I want to go for a long distance bike ride. I've never done that before. How do I do that? So great resources for you to grab, use however you want. And then just the last one is a really important tool for folks who maybe are trying to find new places to go, or also just have kind of those trail maps in their pocket with information about amenities that are available, contact information for trail managers if you're not sure about something being open or closed. Really great resource. It's free to the public and something that we hope people will continue to access and use as they plan their spring trail adventures. And with that, I'm going to introduce Jewel, who I'm so glad is here with us today, and talk a little bit about Girl Trek. And before we get into the questions, Jewel, can you just tell everyone a little bit about what Girl Trek is?
Yes, absolutely. And Brandy, it's so great to be here participating in this press conference. So yes, Girl Trek is the largest health movement for Black women and girls in the US. What started out 10 years ago as a 10-week challenge with 2 friends is now a movement of 1 million Black women across the country and throughout the African diaspora who are actively looking for ways to be healthy. And through that, we use radical self-care and walking as that first practical step to getting healthy. And so at Girl Trek, we believe that you cannot take care of anyone until you take care of yourself. So we believe that self-care is not selfish. And that's what we do.
I love that self-care is not selfish, because as a mom of 3 boys, I often feel like it is, and I got to get a lot better about that.
Oh, yes.
So we were preparing for this and chatting, and I've been seeing all of the fantastic news coverage that Girl Trek hit an incredible milestone during the pandemic. 1 million Black women practicing radical self-care, and that is just such a huge accomplishment. So in a time when everything changed, everything, how do you think it was possible to hit that milestone?
Well, that's a really great question. So back in November of 2020, Girl Trek reached 1 million Black women walking. 1 million Black women who had taken the Girl Trek pledge. And so that has been Girl Trek's big audacious goal for years, to reach 1 million Black women walking by the year 2020. And then the pandemic hit, right? So Girl Trek is known for large walking groups and teams, people meeting in their neighborhoods on Saturday mornings, in state parks, national parks, along trails, all over the place. And so what happened is that we could no longer gather because of social distancing. And in the Girl Trek community, we like to say physical distancing because we know that social connection is essential, especially at a time of so much uncertainty, so much global uncertainty. So Girl Trek has always been good about organizing through digital media, through digital platforms and spaces, right? So we have created a robust digital community through our Facebook walking groups, through our social media presence on Twitter and Instagram. And so we had already established a big community online. And so what we had always been doing is taking that online presence and making it the first step of walking, like taking the online to in-person and actual movement. And so with the pandemic, that was limited. So what we did was we created a number of programs, one called the Black History Boot Camp, where it's a walk and talk podcast series in 21-day increments, where people can call in for 21 days live and listen to Girl Trek's co-founders have a conversation about a historical figure. And so I like to tell people the Black History Boot Camp walk and talk series is akin to if you're in a restaurant and you're eavesdropping on a really juicy conversation at the table next to you. So we created communities through that. We also had an online interview series called Daughters of, where we brought together revolutionary icons in the Black community. We had a conversation with Nikki Giovanni and Angela Davis. We brought together the daughters of Dr. King and Malcolm X for a never before conversation. So we really piloted programming that that was specific to our community. We talked about culture, but all of it, the underpinning was walking, movement, and radical self-care.
I love that. And so relevant to in a summer where everything was upended and racial justice also went to the forefront. And I have been in many circles. I've known Girl Trek and I've known Vanessa for a long time. And I've been in many circles where all of a sudden you're seeing it pop up. And in some of your media kit materials, there's a great snapshot from AOC saying, I discovered this awesome boot camp. And so I think it's just been so great to connect people with learning, community, and outdoor activity.
Absolutely.
That's been so great. So you're admired at this point, even more than before, but as a movement and a community for Black women. And these are things that I think we've all needed so much this year. And I think people would argue as we look at late stage pandemic, we are going to need even more. Resilience is a word I'm hearing a lot these days. Our resilience buckets are kind of empty and we're going to have to refill them. And so I'm curious, how does this act of a daily walk help to build that resilience and build that community back?
Well, that's a really good question, right? So we encourage people to walk in small pods of 3, or walk alone as a solo trekker. And so while you're walking, of course, the benefits of walking are infinite. It is a way to, you can walk away preventative illness. We have members in our community who started out in Girl Trek taking a number of medications for diabetes, high blood pressure, things like that are preventable. And through their active engagement with walking with Girl Trek, they have reduced or in some cases not needed medicine at all, right? So walking is a balm for your spiritual self, your mental self, your physical self. So, I mean, it's infinite. It's a great way to take in some fresh air, to let the sun hit your face, to take in vitamin D, which we know during the pandemic was something that vitamin D deficiency made people more susceptible to coronavirus. So again, like nature's cure of washing your hands, fresh air, moving your body, these things that in the Black community are traditions and practices that have been passed down for centuries. And so those are the types of traditions and things we doubled down on in Girl Trek. We went back to nature and to our roots in ways that can sometimes easily be forgotten for Black communities and Indigenous cultures.
And I loved, and for everyone watching, if you haven't seen the Daughters of series, I love the community connection across generations. Yes. And it was so beautiful and artful, and I think it's just educational and spiritual. It kind of hit all the things that we needed so much last year. But I would argue it's like recreation. We need these things all the time. We just weren't paying attention to how much we needed them. And I want to get at the point too about being outside and vitamin D and all of those things. And there's a Stanford study from a few years ago that I think when we look at where we're going from here and some of the physical and mental health reports that are coming out about depression and anxiety and PTSD that people are experiencing in this time. People who walked for 90 minutes in a natural area, as opposed to people who walked in a high traffic urban setting, but you could argue really any setting, right, is good, had decreased activity in parts of their brain that are responsible for symptoms of depression and anxiety. So much great and rich, I think, science coming out as well about how important it is for us to have access to nature, and not just access to nature that we travel to, access to nature where we live. And we can walk in that space and we can do all sorts of activities in that space. Yeah. Kenji, I'm going to turn to you and talk a little bit about this idea of responsible recreation. A year ago, boom, everything went upside down and topsy-turvy, and it still kind of is, isn't it? Including recreation. And the outdoors has served such an important role. I think we've made that point clear here, and it still does. It is so important for social connection in addition to physical and mental health. How did things going upside down, but yet our knowledge and understanding about the outdoors mattering, how did that inspire the Recreate Responsibly Coalition?
Thanks, Brandy. That's a great question. And I'm excited to be here and representing the Recreate Responsibly Coalition Steering Committee, which is a national organization. There's also state coalitions forming up across the country with the same mission. Really, Recreate Responsibly was a response from the I guess I would say the industry, which inclusive of organizations that take people outdoors, that lead nature exploration, as well as companies and organizations that facilitate the outdoor recreation experience through products and services. So a lot of the coalition are already stakeholders in the outdoors as a healthy option for people to get out and exercise and participate in activities that help mental health and physical health. The big change, of course, was just the surge of interest and activity in all of our close to home natural areas, as well as the iconic parks, at a time when the advice and the guidance from the CDC and from various government entities was to not travel, don't go anywhere, but it's okay to go outside. So there was this sort of strange guidance, wear a mask and don't get near people. And it was this new time for a lot of people exploring the outdoors. So the coalition was formed up as a response, roughly in April of last year, through conversations between organizations that the Outdoor Alliance and REI, the company that sells outdoor equipment. So that conversation sparked this idea that, hey, we should utilize kind of digital techniques, digital marketing, and our reach as organizations to put a program together so that we can help reach as many people as possible with the messaging of how to do this responsibly in a atmosphere of unsureness that you referred to earlier, Brandy. So that's where it started, and it grew to over 1,000 organizations across the country, in the nonprofit world, the advocacy space, the public lands management space, and the industry itself. So it's a unique organization of advocates from different sectors, all having the same interest around welcoming people to the outdoors, making sure that there's access, but also coaching in a way that's effective on how to do it so that you're having the least impact. That you also referenced, a la leave no trace, and to be able to do it so that it's sustainable and we don't have to close down areas or create access challenges because of the impact. So that's the key, I would say, the key function of the Recreate Responsible Coalition. Even today, we have 7 tenets that if you go to recreateresponsibility.org, you can find those. And these are simple mechanisms that we are coaching, but that also change over time, just like the pandemic has created this need to be very flexible and change with the science and information that we're absorbing. Seasonal changes also have effects on how people recreate. And so that needs to be taken into account. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about where it's going. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but also just throw some props to Girl Trek, because I know Morgan, and it's just such a great program. And I'm so excited about the successes that you've had, Jewel. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I love the idea of Recreate Responsibly coming both from advocates and industry, because I think often, we're all working in our parallel spaces and we forget to come together, or we come together only around funding opportunities or things like that. And what I love about Recreate Responsibly is that there was this shared understanding that people needed guidance. They needed to know, what is it even like to maybe be an outdoorist? I don't do that on a day-to-day basis. Or moving people from someone who's doing a daily walk in their neighborhood to someone who wants to go out and do something different. That's all really important, but also reinforcing all of those principles around mask wearing and being responsible users of the space. I've heard so many stories about, especially as we enter spring, people being excited to get outside. Maybe they started hiking in the fall and they don't know that spring has a mud season in a lot of the country, right? And they're going to get out there and they could have an impact. So this has become such a great resource for so many people. Kenji, a big question has been, Recreate Responsibly emerged from the pandemic. And now that vaccines are rolling, I think that we can all be optimistic about where it's going, but realistic that, it's not going to be fixed or over tomorrow. But as they're rolling out, what does responsible recreation look like in a vaccinated world?
That's a great one, Brandy. As I mentioned, we've had to adapt the messaging already, even in the peak of the pandemic, and certainly there's not a for sure path ahead. Who knows exactly what's going to happen? So we need to remain flexible and kind of ride that balance line between the information we're getting on the nature of the pandemic, the changing aspect that includes variants and other elements of the science we don't really know yet. Who is transmitting the disease, even if they've been vaccinated? Is that we don't really have that nailed down quite yet. So there's still a need to be adaptable, not just through that science, but through the seasons. Again, like as you mentioned, mud season is a thing, and in various parts of the country, there's a localism to recreating outdoors. At some point it gets too hot in the Southwest, or the requirement for water is really, top of mind. And you'd be shocked how many people, I'm out here in California, do end up without enough water and get in trouble, even in the spring. And so elements that like that are seasonal, combined with the changing science. And then another really important thing that is that of course came to big light last summer, but is really a tenet of Recreate Responsibility and maybe becoming one of the more important aspects is the inclusive nature of the outdoors. That it's in a way one of the unique places that we have access to, that we want to provide more access to, or realize more access, especially close to home resources. But it's a place where we all belong. We all have, the equal right or seat at the table, or, I think of a campfire in a way as sort of the elemental way to where people are around it, but nobody's in charge of it necessarily, or leading a discussion. We're all equal around that. And I think that piece of the outdoor experience, that natural or immersion in nature, really is a great opportunity to kind of reset or level up when it comes to who's recreating outdoor and how.
And I'm going to use that as an opportunity to go to the next kind of point around building community, because that, the outdoors and nature is the community all around us. And it's, our relationship and our engagement with Mother Earth and Mother Nature, and, how we're taught to care for or not, or respect these spaces. And I think so much of that has evolved so quickly in this time. And when you think about changing people's behaviors or changing kind of a social change movement, you always think about knowledge, like people know about what's happening, and their attitudes. Do they believe it? Do they not believe it? And then are they doing it? And we saw all of those things change in 2020 so quickly. And we have a chance, I think, to hold on to and invest in and grow this rich outdoors community that involves everything from daily walks to your neighborhood trails and parks, to the more kind of traditional, what you think of as outdoors, of like climbing and going to these epic places, in our country. So you've both talked a lot about demand for kind of what this all represents, and really the community that was formed when Black women walked together, and the community that formed when millions and millions of people kind of flocked outside last year. What can we learn, I think, from what the pandemic community and what pandemic outdoor time taught us that we can carry forward as we try to heal? And that's for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll go on that. I think that what we've learned is that there is a huge demand for time in nature and time outdoors, and people have realized that in their life. It's not just a theory. And even before the pandemic, there had been a rising body of research talking about nature RX and the value of of time, forest bathing, and like a lot of buzzwords and tags that were interesting, and that gave a little bit of underpinning to the idea that those of us have been, part of the industry, or that have been, kind of well versed in this outdoor adventure world, kind of, felt for a long time like, I don't know how to articulate it, but when I go out there, I feel better. I don't know exactly what it is. And now there's more science under that. So as the pandemic came, then it became empirical science, like, oh, there's millions of people that are getting this, and not by being taught it or told it, they just had this natural urge to get out. And I see it every day in my neighborhood, and I live in the urban core in Los Angeles. So it's something to behold. And I think it's important that we realize that this isn't going to just go away. It's not like the pandemic will be over, vaccinations will happen, and then people will say, oh, boy, that was fun, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I think people have, we very much anticipate, and the research also shows, both by the OIA, by companies like REI, and this movement is going to continue, and we need to continue to be vigilant on recreating responsibly, and maybe that'll shift from wearing masks at all times on a trail to giving people a little bit more space, or making sure that your leave no trace behavior is on point. Those are the way forward, I think.
So adding to what Kenji said, how do I think the pandemic will change, permanent changes from the pandemic to outdoor industries and people's attitudes and moods toward being outdoors? I think it's, like Kenji said, it's here to stay, that people didn't have the language or the understanding, but knowing that when I go out for a walk in the afternoon or in the morning, I just feel better. I feel connected. And so I'm based in New Orleans. And so I walk in my neighborhood all the time. I do go to some, parks and trails and things like that. I like to walk along the lakefront near the water, Lake Pontchartrain, but really I walk in my neighborhood in Gentilly. I have my little route down my street. It's an opportunity for me to, reconnect with the neighborhood and really be seen. And so for Girl Trek, we say lace up your sneakers and walk outside your front door, as a way to take up space, be visible, to let the world know that we're here. And for Black people in particular, it's really a beautiful thing for us to be outside in nature for leisure and pleasure, and not in a historical relationship to labor. And so to really be out there for fun. So I really love my walks. I'm seeing more people out there walking, and not just, people think, oh, walking maybe for the middle-aged or for elderly people. They think about mall walking, but I see families out there walking. And so I wanted to speak on something you said a while earlier, Brandy, about Girl Trek being intergenerational. And that's one of the beautiful things about Girl Trek, that it is an intergenerational movement. If you are able-bodied and able to go outside and walk, you can walk with your mom, your grandmother, your children, your family at large. And while we're an organization that unapologetically serves the needs and desires for Black women, we do recognize that we don't live in isolation, that we're a part of a community. It could be a family community, our global community, our neighborhood. And so everyone benefits when people are out there in nature, walking in their communities. People are being observant of what's happening. I get to look at which houses are for sale. I know the faces of my neighbors who live further down the block. So it's really a way to get back to that neighborhood community spirit. And so I love it. And I do believe it's here to stay.
I hope so. And I have the same optimism about what's to come, even just what we're seeing from early trail use data in 21 in January. February is a little different because February was extreme weather, I think, pretty much everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
But in January, we were seeing still those elevated numbers on trail use that just indicate that people are, even if they're going back to work, some of this has become a habit. It doesn't take that long to put on your sneakers, go outside your front door, and then all of a sudden you're doing it every day, and you didn't even realize it. It just started to happen. And I often talk about, go for it.
No, I just want to jump in and say that, you don't even realize that for 30 minutes, you can really if you want to get out and walk in silence and observe, but oftentimes I will use it as an opportunity to reconnect with friends. Like, hey, I'm going for a walk. I know we missed each other, last week. Let's connect. I'll take walking meetings at Girl Trek. We really are big with that. Like, we'll take a walking meeting. Okay, we're talking and brainstorming and we're all walking. And before you know it, it's 45 minutes. We've zoomed past that 30 minutes and it feels really refreshing.
It really does. It really does. And one of the things that when we start to think about what does it mean to create a trail in every neighborhood, or that easy place to get to walk that's connected to nature, that's safe, separated from vehicle traffic, that is accessible. So, maybe it's paved, it's a surface that's easy to access. When we think about that, I often look at trails and rail trails as, I call it, the invitation to the outdoors, right? So the person who has started with Girl Trek and they're putting on their sneakers and they're walking outside, to the person who's, rock climbing out in the West, the rail trail becomes a space that you can kind of merge all of those experiences together. And I think there's a lot of community in that. And suddenly you realize that the value we're getting, whether I'm walking close to home or I'm adventuring, is the same value. We're getting sunshine and air and movement and all of those mental health and physical health benefits, and really just the connection. I think one of the things I've loved about being home during this time, it's hard to say you loved anything, but I have loved seeing my neighbors. There are so many people who live in my neighborhood who I probably zipped past in my car or at the bus stop or whatever. And now it's like they walk by my house and we wave. And they know my kids, and I've got my one son loves to watch the traffic go by. And so he's like the mayor. Everyone knows him. They just wave to him when they go by, and this wouldn't have happened otherwise. So I do think that there's this essential aspect of recreation, community, physical activity, being outside, and where we can do that. And I really hope that a lot of that sticks. Yeah. I think we're coming to the end. So I'm just going to close with one question, and I'll start with kind of what we think, and I'll turn it to you, Jewel, and then Kenji, you can have the last word. But what's next? And I think what's next at Rails-to-Trails Conservancy in this late stage pandemic year, and then hopefully in the after times coming up, is that we really want people to continue to create those trail moments. We want them to make that part of their daily lives, make that a habit, getting out and finding those spaces to be active. We want folks to become advocates for more of those spaces. I think once you learn how awesome it is to be able to have access to nature in an urban environment or a suburban environment or a really rural environment, you realize, wow, like we need more of this. So we really want folks making those moments for themselves and then helping us make more of those moments for others. Jewel, what's next for Girl Trek?
Well, now that we have reached our 1 million miles, so we're going to pack up and go home. Just joking. We're not going to do that because it doesn't stop. So for us now, with 1 million members across the country and expanding globally, we're going to double down on service. What does it look like when 1 million and counting Black women show up for the world? And so we're going to focus on service. We're going to focus on getting back to our roots. We can't wait for us to be able to have large in-person gatherings. For 5 years, we took 800 plus Black women on an annual retreat called the Stress Protest to the Rocky Mountains. And it was basically an adult women's summer camp. It was beautiful. We were eating s'mores. We were out rock climbing. We were in the mountains. We were on trails. We were doing yoga and Pilates and all kinds of amazing things. So we are looking forward to those in-person gatherings. So what's next for us? Getting out nature, doubling down on that promise to ourselves and really connecting with the world and service. We want to encourage more service opportunities. What does it look like when 1 million Black women give back to the world? And that's where Girl Trek is in 2021 and beyond.
And Kenji, last word.
That's
what's next for Recreate Responsibly?
Thank you, Kenji.
Yeah, I love the description earlier, and so I'm gonna grab that. And I love the walking as medicine analogy there. And I think that walking in the outdoors, walking in nature, is like medicine with a capital M. And I think, when we talk about Recreate Responsibly and how that's morphing and adapting to the situation as it unfolds, and becomes more accepted by hundreds of thousands and millions of people as some basic rules of engagement, I think what we want to emphasize is what does responsibly mean? I think in the beginning of the pandemic, it meant something, and now it means something a little bit different, and it's going to continue to change. And one of the tenets of that is inclusion, is to be able to encourage an openness and a welcomeness and ease of access to not just the iconic parks and places in our country that are highlighted and at the top of every bucket list, so to speak, but the close to home places that Jewel's talking about in the neighborhood, nearby. Where can I walk to? I live within a mile of a new trail that's called the Park to Playa Trail in Los Angeles that goes to the beach from Baldwin Hills. It's amazing, and it just opened up fairly recently. I know a Rails-to-Trails project in New Orleans. In fact, my friend Mike Massey, who runs the Massey's Outfitters, has a shop right on that trail, and it's such a great resource. You know that one?
It's the Lafitte Greenway. It's amazing.
That's right. Yeah. It's crazy that I know that, but only I've been there once. But
and a Hall of Famer. We named it the Hall of Fame Trail 2 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent. Wow. So I think these close to home resources are really key, in that somehow we need to encourage investment and policy shaping around these opportunities. And I think Recreate Responsibly is going to be a major force for that, as a coalition with over 1,000 members, all stakeholders in this movement. And so there's going to be an important role to play when it comes to encouraging local, regional policy, as well as federal policy on this front. And we have great partners in the Outdoor Alliance and the industry members across the country that are part of this coalition. So we have a great opportunity, and it's exciting to be part of it. It's a vision that is super helpful, and I think in the end supports our caring and prioritizing the natural, or I should say the wild nature of our local areas.
And Kenji, Girl Trek needs to be
involved
with the coalition. We have to talk off after this.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're going to do that, and we'll definitely reach out. And I like I said, I think Morgan's been just a super delightful person for me to get to know, and I think I met her in Wyoming at a conference there, and so you are definitely nationwide. I'll look
Jewel,
forward
we
to
need you on our
working
Recreate
together.
Responsibly. We need you on our coalition communications working group. It's a fun group of folks, that's for sure.
Oh man,
I think this has been so lovely, and I think a kind of closing takeaway to sum up all of the pieces is that what's ahead and what's needed is advocacy and activism, but also taking care of each other in the places where we get outside, whether that's in our neighborhoods or that's somewhere that we're traveling to. And that's going to be so important as we manage this in-between time and late stage pandemic, and also forever, right? This is stuff that really matters all the time. I've put up, for everyone watching, I've put up our contact information so you can find all of us here. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And it's just been a great conversation about what's coming. Jewel, Kenji, thank you so much for joining us. I just am so excited to have you here with us today, and good things ahead.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brandy. So nice to
and I can't wait to get on a
Jewel.
plane and come visit you.
Oh yeah. Bye, everybody.
All y'all, I'm coming to visit when I can.
Definitely welcome.
But
yes.
Bye-bye.